So I want to share from Chabad.org. It says the extraordinary extent to which our life is partner is connected to our life purpose mission can be seen in the Rebbe's letter to a man struggling with marital discord. I wrote to you in my previous letter about the fact that you will certainly find challenges and difficulties, especially in relation to domestic marital harmony. And that is precisely where one's most urgent effort is required. For from the intensity of the difficulties in question, it is evident that this is a prime locus of your essential life task of refinement, as it is understood from the writings of the Arizal and as made clear in Chassidut. For aside from a few exceptions, the souls of our generation have already been in the world and are returning now as a Gilgul, reincarnation. I have a pimple. Interesting. Okay. Don't usually get one. Their main purpose is to rectify what they did not do among the 613 mitzvot commandments, good deeds, or possible connections. Tzav means connection, in their previous lifetimes on this earth. When it comes to those mitzvahs that the person performed previously, the evil inclination does not put up its strongest opposition. It merely opposes sufficiently so that free choice remains. This is because this person has already effected refinement in these matters. However, in those matters where their service were lacking in previous lifetimes, meaning in their specific portions of the world, in their psyche that they failed to refine, the evil inclination's opposition is at its fullest strength. With respect to practical action, which is the essential point, I will once again seek to inspire and implore you to make the greatest effort possible to establish a peaceful home, even though this requires concessions, as these are not concessions in Torah and Mitzvah. To be sure, most intimate, and that's the end of the quote from the Bavitcher Rebbe. And then he says, and then Chabad.org, they say, to be sure, our most intimate relationships are rarely smooth and easy. In fact, these are the very relationships with which we often struggle most and cause the most emotional stress and turmoil, testing us to the extreme. And that's precisely the point. True goodness, including depth of character, virtue, nobility, often emerges specifically in response to challenges presented by those closest to us, requiring us to dig deeper and tap into our true strength and greatest potentials. I went to a 12-step meeting to really think about this, group recovery meeting, to workshop this. So I realized what I resisted is often what I really needed. For example, the time with my own nervous system, a higher power. And the reason I resisted is because of previous attachment injury, which created this desperation panic that for safety, belonging, connection. And however, I'm in a phase now where I'm trusting I don't have to look outward, and it's really not my job to educate a partner, and I can release other desires and feel my own. And I want to do that also with shame. And I don't have to look outward, even though I had felt in the past so alone and empty without my person, really a surrogate parent. I have to become that surrogate parent. I also can't dwell and live in the memories, the fantasies. I have to stay in the actual reality. And that's where I can feel comfortable, safe, secure with myself, and have that circuitry, that cord with myself. It's being able to move my body, share my voice, really, and to be grateful for all the people that are actually in my life, rather than focusing on someone who may or may not be avoiding me or is off limits, And finally, in terms of taking good care of myself, instead of stretching, let's say with desire, instead of stretching, but keeping, I was thinking about with my stomach, not stretching the stomach, just regular feedings. And so I wanted to share, I decided to take a 6-week break from somebody to figure things out for myself, because I felt the person who I was stuck with, I shouldn't have felt stuck with. It should have been that we were both grateful to meet each other. It felt like he wasn't someone I could go to when life felt stressful in my humanity, and we were bringing out the worst in each other. I was saying cruel, degrading things, lecturing, basically even verbal abuse sometimes, harassing him, unrelenting, and I felt guilty for hurting the cruelly a loved one. And he was a loved one to me in many ways, and he was unavailable, avoidant, stonewalling, yo-yoing, dismissive, shutting down. He deprived me of love and warmth, care, empathy, and wanted all the control and power, and didn't prioritize, initiate, or provide. And so let's say that's clarity, support, and I would say it's even generosity, because when you're generous, you want to share, right? So just generosity. But then I realized, you know what, like, why was I so attached? Because it was good. It wasn't only because he was familiar in many ways, because I have been in touch with my dad, but there's a practice, a balancing practice where it's called like seeing the good. So before I do that, I just want to share from, well, actually, I'm going to do that first. So he always forgave me when I asked for forgiveness. He shared interesting tidbits. You know, this is not like just to keep the love alive, because there's no guarantee that I'll ever see him again, talk to him again, that we're meant for each other. I mean, maybe there is a guarantee if like God decides who's with who, if one believes that there's fate and, you know, destined soulmate. But the idea that I'm saying is that like, this is just to balance for myself, like, what was the good for me? So he was always forgiving when I asked for forgiveness. He shared interesting tidbits and information about himself, like his upbringing, his relatives, siblings, the plans for a holiday, schedule, daily schedule, lifestyle, daily practices, and things that he was like hobbies, really. I don't know if to call them hobbies or interests, really. And he was good at small talk. He made cute voices for me, cracked jokes, singing. And he said praise about my appearance. He reassured me about my weight, and said I'm like 10 years younger. And he seemed to enjoy my rawness, my colorfulness, my depth, my energy. He was good at the pursuit, which may or may not be why there was an issue. It could be the pursuit is like all he was good at, but then he couldn't continue. But anyway, he was good at pursuit, like engaging me, listening to my rambles, making me feel prioritized, interesting, and liked. He gave me benefit of the doubt for my mistakes and flaws. There was flirting, kind, creative words, sensual talk about touch. He was interested in getting to know me. He sent these little memes or links. He said my Bubby's kapitel when she was sick, and he would express interest. And also, he shared supportive resources to help me in life. Like, there was some philosophy from this organization, Shaolin, this idea of Ikigai, which is about like a living purpose. And all of this you could find in Judaism, but he was interested in the Asian way. Breath work, this calming, or like these Hertz music, like 333 or 9 something, you know, the Hertz music. He taught me about how you hold fingers, like to calm down, mindfulness. I noticed that he heard constructive criticism without retaliating, even criticism, not constructive. He sent selfies and voice notes when I asked. He was a good influence with things I like discipline, routine, endurance, tolerance, and patience. And he did have a lot of useful broad spectrum information about food, health, self-regulation. So maybe, you know, why was there a lack of safety for me where I became like clingy or needy or like begging and demanding in some way and lashing out when I didn't get my way? So Andrea Summer on Instagram is AndreaSomer. Safety for a woman means she feels met, seen, and understood emotionally. Her body relaxes and opens with him, and she knows she can disagree without fearing disrespect or abandonment. She can express emotion without being dismissed. She does not need to perform femininity or hide parts of herself. She doesn't need to over-explain herself or stay silent or smaller to keep the peace. She's not micromanaged or controlled. Conflict leads to repair, not further disconnection and punishment. She can rest in his presence and trust his leadership. She feels chosen consistently, not conditionally. He takes accountability without defensiveness or avoidance. I wanted to go to a 12-step meeting about some of these topics, and so I was feeling a lot of grief at that time, a little distant, a little guilty, calm, grateful for the rawness of the feelings, though. And then I was thinking about what that meant, about that distance, and it was like a panic that would come up, almost like a hunger for that life support, that umbilical cord, and trusting that life supports life. And as I grow up, I have to trust that there's an accompanying presence within or around me versus a literal, like more childlike need for a tangible, to need to be held, to be able to touch hands on. So as we grow up, we start to feel the presence even when the person's not physically there, right? And I also noticed that like when I have a lighter body, I have a more peaceful mind, my heart could be full of love, and that my existence itself is my validation, because that's to be in reality. I'm existing now, this is existing, this every moment is a full existence, versus the fantasy or the memory, which do not actually fully exist except in fantasy and memory. And the idea of not stretching the stomach for the future satisfaction's sake is a way of like being there for my future self, not setting myself up for dependency or for, to need more than I need. And then, I've been in touch with my dad recently, and I was, noticing some patterns, and it's like seeing a version of myself that, the aggravation, nervous system outsourcing, victim, fault finding, cannot listen. Someone's always right while someone else is wrong. It's like, I think it's called zero-sum game. It's like someone has to lose. Loud, aggressive voice, coming out swinging. And then I'm thinking about like I mentioned, the lack of empathy, the stonewalling from somebody when I needed regulate, like I was coming for connection regulation. So that person may not be worthy. So, so he's unworthy, and it doesn't mean he's a bad person. It just means he's unworthy of the relationship, right? Because he couldn't make the relationship worthy. So he's unworthy, in other words. But I learned how to self-regulate more. So instead of having a surrogate parent, it's just me and other humans in the world. Maybe at times it's this one or that one. We can all kind of regulate each other at times. It's not just one person, like a parent, who's responsible for me. And I also noticed something that I could start to do with my body, which is I could ask the body part, the pain, like, what's the message? Like, there was, like I said, there was a sense of feeling like guilty for being cruel to someone I love. It was in my right arm and shoulder. And so there's this woman, Ayelet Polonsky, you can find her on Instagram, AYELET POLONSKY. And so she says that every experience of darkness holds a spark of divine light waiting to be revealed. And she gets this from the Baal Shem Tov, who is the founder of Hasidus. Actually, there were some Hasidic people before but he's the founder of the Hasidic movement, Hasidic lifestyle. So there's actually a 3-step process. Let's say we're using anxiety or fear. So that distance panic, that panic at feeling distant from the regulation source, right? The parent. So the Baal Shem Tov says there's working with difficult emotions. It could be any emotion really, but it's the same process the Creator uses to bring light out of chaos. First is called surrender, hachna'ah. Instead of fighting it, you soften toward it, which allows the nervous system to relax and create space. So this shouldn't be like, ha, ha, ha. And you go, I'm willing to feel what's here. I'm willing to feel what's here. And the emotion becomes a messenger instead of an enemy. Then you have Havdalah, separation. So emotions are signals, not identity. You're not the storm, but the awareness witnessing it. Thoughts are not always the truth. There's discernment. So when you feel like there's something wrong, something's wrong, you go, breathe. There's guidance here. And you lean into it. The anxious mind is saying there's something wrong. The soul is saying breathe, there's guidance here. And then finally, hamtakah, sweetening. This is when we can transform energy. What felt overwhelming becomes fuel. For example, fear becomes clarity. Chaos, like fear becomes clarity. Chaos becomes wisdom. Anxiety becomes creative life force. And we sweeten these judgments with compassion because it doesn't disappear, it becomes illuminated. And what once, controlled, maybe we felt controlled by, now becomes our teacher, and it's like we learn from it. And the last thing I want to share is inspired by an Instagram account, chosen.gently. And the idea here is that to find my part. So basically, relationships where you're looking for someone else to regulate you, and perhaps I did nothing wrong, and it always takes two to tango, and so on. But in a case where it was like, I could look at my own part with this relationship I was mentioning. So I felt insecure about the space, not trusting he would come back. I took the need for his space as rejection, and I didn't listen. I tried to guilt. I made it about me, put my needs first. And there was many times he said it's not a match because he was afraid of not being attractive, because he wants to take a break from dating. He expected me to know what had upset him. I shouldn't have begged. I shouldn't have spiraled. I shouldn't have worked too hard, tried to convince, lose my dignity, make it about my worth. At that point, I could have let it go. That's what started to create this attachment, right? The more I would invest, And the truth is, he was probably being avoidant. He would maybe have been very good at pursuit, but not good at intimacy. Or he never met me. He didn't understand what the nervous systems were doing. Also, this chasing idea of trying to earn affection, making excuses for poor treatment, is what can happen. Like when we look at that, we say, I don't want to do that. That doesn't befit me. Whether the poor treatment is a consistency or making me question where I stand, not meeting my needs, games, inconsistency. The coming back to the self is that these needs are valid. I need somebody who I could go to when life is stressful. I would like someone who's generous. These are things that matter to me. I don't have to change a man, right? And then expressing my experience, my feelings, my needs directly instead of attacking the character, testing, hinting, wanting mind reading. For example, you could say, I'm feeling anxious where this is going. Can we talk about it? Or I need more communication during the week. And we're going to stop here. And I wish everybody all the best. And have a good week. We're going to have one more video before the holiday of Passover, which is 8 days. It's going to be an extra day for the day before Passover. So I think, actually, I don't know if we're going to have one or two more videos. And it's going to be a little different, I think, after Passover. I'm going to be doing these videos more in like a current way. We're almost caught up with all of our books together. This is the 18th notebook that I've been working with, and we're about to be caught up to what I'm actually journaling from the past. So we're about to be caught up. The things that I'm reading today just happened within the last week or so. So it's about to come. We're about to catch up with time. In other words, everything's about to come together for this, for what I'm sharing here, which is pretty amazing. All right. All the best. Bye-bye.